I think Assassin's Creed Mirage officially proves to me that it's over for the franchise. One could say the writing was on the wall with the release of Origins in 2017 when the series became nothing short of a bad Witcher 3 clone, and both Odyssey and Valhalla really encapsulated that identity and would stray even further away from the roots of the franchise. But for some reason, like an idiot, I held on to hope that it wasn't too late, that Ubisoft could course correct and finally give the longtime fans like myself what we've been wanting since 2015. Old school Assassin's Creed. With Mirage, Ubisoft claims to have given us that, but in traditional Ubisoft fashion, they've completely missed the point of why we loved those original games in the first place, and with Mirage, have only captured the superficial aspects of those titles without any of the polish, any of the heart, a cohesive direction, or any real depth, leaving Mirage to be a completely hollow and forgettable experience.
Mirage is a return to form, a return to the series' roots.
Wrong! This is the most blatant lie Ubisoft has said in years. Yet every single major gaming outlet and Redditor has latched onto this tagline and shouted it from the rooftops. This is one of the biggest reasons that I know it's officially over for the franchise, at least as far as long-term fans are concerned, because the general gaming community is repeating this horse shit at the top of their lungs.
If we say it enough, they might just believe it.
How about a nice big cup of shut the fuck up?
When the reality is the complete opposite. Just because Ubisoft says it's a return to form, doesn't mean it actually is. Don't let anyone fool you. AC Mirage is just a Valhalla DLC through and through. This doesn't even mean that it's entirely bad if you like Valhalla gameplay, but I think it's important to be grounded in reality before we even dive into this review. Mirage is Valhalla set in Baghdad, without the RPG mechanics. You know, Ubisoft didn't even sell the game for the new standard $70, or even $60. They sold it for just $50, knowing full well that this is just a DLC. So there's two things I want to quickly debunk before we get into the review of this video, and it's a couple talking points I've heard from others about the game. And the first
is Mirage's parkour is so much better than Valhalla.
This is an extreme exaggeration. The parkour is nearly identical. In fact, I'd bet 90% of you can't tell which game is which in these clips. There are extremely subtle differences, like Basim being ever so slightly faster than Eivor, and parkouring down is a little bit smoother, I guess. Though I hesitate to use the term smooth when discussing the parkour in this game because it's anything but that. Just like Eivor, Basim sticks to surfaces like he's being sucked down by a magnet. It consistently feels unnatural to parkour in this game due to its stiffness and lack of precision or fluidity of the movements. And the second talking point I keep hearing?
Mirage is a difficult game.
Anyone who says this game is hard is a fucking bot with a room temp IQ. In fact, if you think this game is hard, you are more than likely legitimately mentally impaired. Throwing knives in this game have the strongest aim assist in the world. You could try your best to intentionally miss your target, and the game would still pull the knife to the enemy. The AI in this game is genuinely the worst in the series. You can stab guards right in front of each other, and they won't react. Smoke bombs are extremely overpowered in this game. One smoke bomb can incapacitate 10 guards at a time, for so long that you have time to slowly stealth kill all of them before the smoke clears. Also, I want to point out how slow and kind of boring and unexciting this stealth multi-kill is with the smoke bomb, versus Assassin's Creed Unity, which is much more exciting to watch and play. You have an auto kill button that teleports you into assassinating up to 5 enemies in an instant, and there is no complexity or difficulty in navigating the game's level design to remain undetected. This game is designed from the ground up to be playable by toddlers, and to those who say that the combat is hard, it isn't hard. It's just bad, like really bad, but we'll get into that a bit later. So typically I'd start off a review with the story, but I'm going to save that for the end because I think it's the most insignificant part of this game. All I'm going to say for now is, it's easily the most forgettable story in the entire series. So let's instead start with Baghdad. Ubisoft had a bit of a difficult task in recreating 9th century Baghdad because there's a pretty big lack of records and practically no excavation that was ever done in real life that would give us an idea of what Baghdad would look like at this time in history. So I'll give them credit for creating a pretty well thought out and cohesive city in Mirage, at least visually. It's certainly not Ubisoft's best work, far from it in fact, but I commend their efforts to recreate the unknown city of Baghdad. It can often look impressive at times. Unfortunately, like most Ubisoft titles though, they failed to make it feel alive or interesting beyond the visuals at a glance. Despite the numerous NPCs, it often feels very static and fake, like an animatronic display or an amusement park. It doesn't feel alive the same way Florence or Venice did in Assassin's Creed 2, a game almost 15 years old. The layout of the buildings often felt very samey with very little variance, which, fair enough. This is likely true to how Baghdad may have been set up architecturally, but it doesn't make for interesting gameplay after the first few hours, where each and every mission begins to feel identical to the last, because the layouts of the sandbox feel the same across the whole city. Exploring the map became uninteresting pretty quick for me for this reason. Dome of the Ass? What the fuck? And the content inside Baghdad isn't all that interesting either. There's a contract board, which has you completing very basic assassinations, or pickpocketing, or freeing captives. The type of tasks that generally can repeat forever. Other than that though, you have chests to loot with gear inside, or schematics to upgrade your gear. And that's really it as far as the side content is concerned, which feels pretty weak when you consider, again, 15 years ago in Assassin's Creed 2, there were assassin tombs, which were like these puzzle parkour time trials that took you to awesome locations around the cities, a lot of them underground. And once clearing all of them allowed you to unlock Altair's armor set. Templar dungeons were a thing as well. Similar to assassin tombs, would reward the player with more story tidbits, and usually a big payday upon clearing. You could invest in your villa, work on upgrading all the buildings and shops. You could search for Animus lore bits, all around the cities. Hell, even collecting the 100 feathers led to cool rewards like Uncle Mario's Warhammer, and the very helpful Auditore cape. Mirage has nothing like that, just meaningless busy work, working towards almost nothing other than a few upgrade materials, or the occasional outfit and a random loot chest. And for some reason, there's merchant tokens that make no sense narratively, and only exist as a currency beyond coins just to get you to grind a few contracts to earn some. This is genuinely one of the goofiest things in the entire game, and it's very immersion breaking to have these random fucking merchant tokens. Now the gameplay can be broken down into stealth and action combat, and while some have been praising the stealth of this game, I fail to understand why. Yeah, it's fun to sneak around and throw your knives and backstab the guards, just like every Assassin's Creed game since 2007. But in the older Assassin's Creed titles, you were often presented with different scenarios with varied locations that always made the stealth missions feel a bit different from one another. I'm not saying they were S-tier gameplay all the time, but at least there was some variety. In Mirage though, stealth becomes extremely boring after a few hours because there's little variance in the missions, and the level design. It's far too sandboxy. How you approach stealth at hour 3 is how you're going to be approaching stealth at hour 12. And the only difference between hour 3 and hour 12 is hour 12 is much easier because you have overpowered smoke bombs, upgraded throwing knife abilities, blow darts, and a maxed out insta-kill button. And other than that, Mirage's stealth feels very similar to Valhalla's. Clearing out copy-pasted bandit camps in Valhalla feels the same as clearing out copy-pasted guard posts in Mirage. And the only improvement to stealth is that everything can be one shot or one stab kill. And I would be praising Ubisoft for this if they also took the initiative to at least make the level design a bit more challenging, or the AI to be improved. But again, this game is extremely easy, so it just didn't feel good at all to breeze through without any challenge whatsoever, or variance in the gameplay. And switching to hard mode didn't make the game any more challenging either, other than making the larger enemies more spongy, and pickpocketing, I guess, became a bit harder. Overall though, stealth was far weaker than any of the older entries because it lacked challenge, and it lacked in variety. Now the combat is a problem, and like I mentioned earlier, it isn't actually hard at all. You press counter, then press attack, or sometimes dodge when the enemy glows bright red. Truly the most basic and easy combat in the world. But I think the reason why some people say it's hard is because it feels so unbelievably horrible to play. This is legitimately one of the worst action combat systems in any game. The fact that this is combat in a 2023 action stealth title is embarrassing. Whoever is responsible for this combat should be fired immediately, or at the very least be mandated to play Assassin's Creed 1 from 2007, because even its combat had more weight to it and felt more fluid. And that game is 16 years old. I don't understand why when you hit an enemy in this game, it's like slicing through butter. There's no impact whatsoever to the combat. How has the combat regressed this far, Ubisoft? How? Enemy variety is something that's lacking as well, but to be honest, it's the least of the problems with the combat. All enemies can be dealt with the exact same way if you play stealthily. Backstab, or throwing knife to the head. Except for the flamethrower guys that require you to hit their oil jar. But if you're smart, and again, it isn't hard to be stealthy in the first place, you'll just avoid combat at any chance because the combat is that bad. And some say that this bad combat encourages stealth, which is true, it does encourage stealth. But for all the wrong reasons. In the older games, you would be encouraged to stealth for extra synchronization, or challenges, or bonuses. And if you weren't stealthy, you often missed out on bonuses. But the punishment in this game is just having to play the combat, and that's awful design. Now I'll briefly gloss over the skill trees because they're mostly pointless to talk about. They're essentially just basic quality of life stuff that isn't even necessary. You could complete this game without upgrading a single skill. In fact, I had several moments where I neglected to upgrade and had like 12 points waiting to be used because this game is just so easy that it didn't even cross my mind to spend my skill points. I would just forget about it. And I kind of wish we could have seen upgrades integrated into the story. Like how in Assassin's Creed 2 you learn several new abilities and get upgrades for story purposes. Like when the thieves teach you how to parkour leap higher, or when Leonardo builds you a wrist rocket gun. You know, things like that instead of just being tied to a menu upgrade. It's like Ubisoft went out of their way to make this game as unengaging as possible. And just like your upgrades, the same could be said about your outfits as well, which have very unimpactful perks applied to them. You can easily avoid all of these and almost nothing will change in your gameplay experience. And all the outfits are found in random chests, instead of completing dungeons or challenges like the older games. I mean, I wore Altair's robes and Ezio's Revelation robes for most of the game because I just unlocked them for free from my Uplay account. But wouldn't it be so much cooler if I had to unlock them through challenges like I did back in AC2? So let's talk about the characters of this game. They were almost all bad, or at the very least boring. From the outset, Basim is not a relatable protagonist, is not charming, and is kind of a pussy. They try to connect us to him by making him basically an Aladdin ripoff, but it just doesn't work at all. And despite Ubisoft's best efforts, or at least half-ass efforts to be honest, he doesn't have any redeeming qualities, especially during the first 2 hours of the game. He got a little bit better as the story progressed and he became a bit more hardened, but he still remained a bit of a schmuck. Again, like most of the story, very forgettable. All of the supporting cast members are mostly forgettable as well, except for Roshan and Ali. Roshan had potential, but sort of sucked because the connection between her and Basim always felt very surface level, and had no sort of emotion behind it at all. Ali was pretty cool though because he was a loose cannon who didn't play by any of the rules, and actually behaved like a badass rebel leader, and he was the only one I ever felt connected to. But every other character had nothing interesting to say, had very vanilla, simple, safe, forgettable Marvel movie dialogue, that had little to no impact on the narrative. Again, extremely forgettable cast of characters. And as for the overarching story, it too is forgettable mostly because nothing happens for about 80% of the game. The intro, while boring, is the only time things seem to be happening. Basim's introduction and the chaos in his neighborhood, the hour of cutscenes showing him becoming a hidden one, and then on to Baghdad. But it's here that the story comes to a screeching halt. In the next 10 to 12 hours, the game becomes a detective simulator. Go here, find a letter, bring it back, discuss, go there, talk to a random NPC, return with information, go eavesdrop on some individuals, return with information to the den. Now I get that this is very similar to AC1 in structure, and it's true that it is. It's very reminiscent of that style, but I think that was one of the weakest aspects of AC1, the moment-to-moment mission design. So it's unfortunate that Ubisoft decided to copy the weakest aspect of AC1 and somehow wrap it up into a story that was much less interesting. I'm honestly shocked at how bored I was taking part in this narrative. Even Valhalla didn't get me this bored, and it's 5 times the length of Mirage. The big assassination target missions were pretty boring too. A lot of them were very fetch questy. One of them I literally did 15 minutes of fetch quests for someone before the end of the mission. Go get a hairpin, get the ivory coin, get the book, get the fucking painting. What is this mission design? And the assassination targets themselves were all pretty bland, generic bad guys, and they added nothing of value to the story other than being a means to an end. And the ending reveal of the leader of the order was extremely underwhelming because we didn't even know who she was until 5 minutes before we kill her. God, it was so bad. And then we get to Basim's ending, which I admit had me lost for a minute, and I had to refresh myself on Basim's story in Valhalla by watching a video. And for those who are interested in the Valhalla Basim stuff, I guess you may have enjoyed this, but for me, I don't know, it just didn't do anything for me at all. This entire story was about 80% MacGuffin chasing, and the other 20% was poorly written cutscene dialogue. Now, as far as the game stability, I played on PC and had probably 4 crashes, which isn't terrible, but it's not great either. But for the most part, it ran pretty smooth, although I did have one section where I had to reload the game because one of the interactable objects froze up on me and wouldn't let me continue the game. And I had a few other minor bugs and glitches, but for the most part, I'd say it ran better than I thought it would, given the state of the industry right now. But microtransactions are of course here, and are the same as Valhalla. Purchasable map icons, armor sets, horses, the usual garbage in a single-player Ubisoft game. And at this point, we all know Ubisoft is not going to be removing this shit anytime soon. Overall, I think the biggest problem AC Mirage has is that it's chained way too hard to the Valhalla RPG game systems and design. It feels like the old school elements were just tacked on and always felt at odds with the foundation of the game. The shitty parkour, the janky combat, the confusing hybrid of open world sandbox and intimate level design. This whole game constantly felt at odds with itself and ended up lacking any coherent direction or consistency. Ubisoft somehow took the worst aspects of the original games and kept the worst aspects of the RPG trilogy as well. It's astounding how Ubisoft is capable of such idiocy. This is definitely one of the most forgettable AC titles in the franchise, and one of the most forgettable games of the year, which is sad. And I say all of this as a massive Assassin's Creed fan of the original games before the downfall began with Syndicate. And ever since then, I've been waiting for Ubisoft to bring me back. But Mirage is not it.